When I was in fourth form in high school, I was introduced to the natural sciences, and I was hooked. For example, this is what I learned. At constant temperature, the volume of a gas is inversely proportional to its pressure. That is Boyle's law. Also, at constant pressure, the volume of a gas is directly proportional to its absolute temperature. That is Charles' law. Wow! Reality, I realized, can be reduced to a series of mathematical equations that explain how nature works. And so I went on and I did my first degree in the natural sciences, and I still follow the science. But later on, I did a second bachelor's degree, this time in philosophy and theology. And that helped me to understand better the science I had learned in my first degree. The natural sciences are grounded in a particular way of knowing. We call a way of knowing an epistemology. I'm sorry to have to use big words, but sometimes they are a good shortcut. And this epistemology, this way of knowing, is called positivism or empiricism. That is to say that what we know is based on data discovered by our senses. The observed data in science is then expressed mathematically and grounded in theory. And we have all kinds of theories in science, like the atomic theory and so on. And these theories have the power of explanation. Now, when I studied theology, theology explored reality that could not be discovered by the senses. When we study God, we can't see God. But that's another story. I don't want to discuss the difference between theology and science today. But later again, when I studied economics in depth in graduate school, it became clear to me that they had laws too. They had something, for example, called the law of supply and demand. But that law, which is one of the fundamental maxims of the market, was not a law in the same sense that Charles' law or Boyle's law was a law. True, the law of supply and demand was grounded in observed data. For example, if an item is scarce and it is in demand, then the vendors will double or triple the price. They'll increase the price. So that's data. They're taking advantage of the scarcity to increase their profits. The aim then for these vendors, these businessmen, is not to make a reasonable profit margin, but to sell the commodity for as much as people will pay for it, as much as the market will bear. Because you think that what it's supposed to be is, what does it cost you to make the thing or to buy it? And then you add on a reasonable profit margin, and then you sell it, and you make your profit. But no, what this market is telling you is that if something costs $10 produced, but people will buy it for $100, you sell it for $100 or $200. You sell it for as much as the market will bear. And the reverse is also true, that if an item is in oversupply, then the vendor may have to sell it cheaply, to dump it, to move it quickly. Now, this kind of behavior, which is founded in greed and pragmatism, has been elevated by the science of economics to the status of a law. And I put science in inverted commas, and I put law in inverted commas, because economics is not a science in the same way that chemistry is a science. And the law of supply and demand is not a law in the same way as Boyle's law is a law. It's one thing to say, I observe greedy people raising their prices when items are scarce. I understand that. I observe that. That's an observation. But it's quite another thing to turn around now and say, when an item is scarce, the law of supply and demand says that you must raise the price. Right? That is not an observation. You have moved from a description of what you observe to be the behavior of greedy people to prescriptive. You are telling people what they must do if they are going to obey the laws of economics. And so, if a vendor does not raise his price in scarcity, then you call him irrational. You don't say that he's being fair to his customers or he's being reasonable with his customers. You say he's being irrational, because economics says, the law of supply and demand says, you must increase your price. And so what economics did was to invent the religion of the market, which determines the real price of an item by some invisible hand. And if the market determines that the real price of a liter of gas is $80, who are we to disagree? Because the market has determined that. And if tomorrow, all of a sudden, the market determines that the price is $100 per liter, then we say the market is working. True believers will accept on faith any price that the market determines, because their religion is the market and they have faith in the market. Now, I find this kind of economic theory to be more akin to fundamentalist religion than to science, requiring faith in something called the market. You can't see the market, you can't touch it, but you can see it at work. Therefore, according to these economists, the market exists. And I say that this is fundamentalist claptrap. The religion of the market gives real religion a bad name. Persons who call themselves economists speculate on how greedy people are going to behave in certain situations. And then they turn around and make a giant leap to assert that this is how they should behave. It is now a matter of ethics. And they call this behavior the market. The market is how greedy people should behave. Economics, therefore, is really a behavioral science, not an objective science. Firms behave to maximize profit. That is what they are supposed to do. Individuals behave to maximize utility. That is what economics says they must do. Economics tries to move from the descriptive to the prescriptive. And people who are otherwise inclined to be atheists, when it comes to God and religion, they are atheists. But when it comes to the market, they put their faith in this thing that they cannot see. They put their faith in this invisible hand. German political economist Max Weber wrote an interesting book called The Protestant Ethic and the Spirit of Capitalism. And in that book, he argued that capitalism could not emerge in history until both the material of capitalism and the spirit of capitalism are present. And he suggests that the pessimistic Calvinist religion, Calvinist version of Christianity, which emphasizes the individualistic, selfish and greedy side of human nature, that this Protestant ethic is the very spirit of capitalism. The stock market is a really interesting phenomenon. The value of the shares in a company should reflect the performance of the company. If the company is doing well and making money, the share should be high. And if it's losing money, the share should fall. But in reality, stock market prices reflect confidence in the performance of the company within the economic environment, which is a different thing from the performance of the company, the actual quality of the company's operations. Confidence, we know, is all about perception. And perception can be easily manipulated. You can make a good company look bad, and public relations can help to make a bad company look good. And the fact is, if we go back a few years, Cash Plus and Olint had the confidence of people with millions of dollars. Greedy people, of course, we have to say. And so, they lost their money when the Ponzi schemes that were Cash Plus and Olint crashed. And so the stock market is a confidence game. And with no change in the intrinsic value of a company or performance of a company, its shares can vary sharply And it can create overnight millionaires or overnight paupers. How could the financial system of the free world depend on such a fickle arrangement? Surely there is a more objective way to organize the investment of capital. What we have is obviously in somebody's interest. Somebody is making money out of it. Large numbers of people can be disadvantaged and dispossessed of their money. But of course, in the end, you just blame it on the market. On page A9 of the Gleaner last week, Friday, President of the Jamaica Chamber of Commerce is quoted as saying, and I quote, "We don't believe that the government must interfere with the free market system. We believe the free market needs to set rates. It is important because once you start to interfere with businesses by telling them what they need to pay or what they need to charge, you are disrupting the flow of competition." End of quote. What Mr. Ian Meter, the president of the Chamber of Commerce, is saying is that we must let the market determine everything, wages, prices, etc. Therefore, there should be no minimum wage. There should be no limits on annual rent increases. Landlords should be able to raise their rent to any amount they want. No restrictions on bank charges and no caps on school fees, because let the market determine what the school fees should be. I will continue to quote from the Chamber of Commerce's article on February 4th, but I'm not going to, because I think you can read it for yourselves. What I want to conclude with today is the observation that there are many economic Kevin Smiths out there. They believe that some must die so that others can live. The welfare of some must be sacrificed so that others can prosper. The health of the economy comes before the health and the lives of the people. We must expose and root out the fake science in the discipline of economics. And we must be very concerned and very clear about how our country is governed.